Right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So in this class, inshallah, I will talk about the matter of the unseen, which is the world of the noble angels. Now, as Muslims, it's among the pillars of Iman that we believe in the existence of angels. And when it comes to matters of the unseen, especially these matters where the brain or the intellect has no role in it, our primary reliance in this matter is the Quran and the Sunnah. And for a believer, if they were not to believe in the existence of angels or they have their own belief, all of these forms, as long as they are not aligned with the Quran and the Sunnah, they're considered to be deviant. So as Muslims, for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the understanding of this world in a way. Many of these texts are found in the Quran, in the Sunnah, and Allah revealed it for a reason. Part of it is to test the believer. For example, if I were to tell a person who's not a Muslim that there are angels on the right and the left of you, and they're taking notes of everything you do, he would be very surprised. He won't necessarily believe in it. To him, for example, especially a person who is considered to be agnostic or an atheist, he will have a hard time accepting that these things take place without him, observing them in the materialistic sense. But part of the belief of the Muslim is that these matters of the unseen, as long as they are said by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by his prophet, we accept them. We accept them the way that they are explained. We don't consider them to be, philosophical concepts or, maybe we misunderstood the text. No, as long as it's clear, we accept it the way it's narrated. And, when a person does that, his rank increases, his belief strengthens. Also, it's an important thing for us to understand the connection between us and the angels. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, like I will explain inshallah in the next slides, that many of these angels, they're involved directly in our everyday life. Another secondary topic based on that is that when it comes to matters of tawheed, matters of achieving Allah's monotheism, is that angels, they play a role. There are many disbelievers, for example, the pagan Arabs, they believed that angels deserved some kind of worship, that they were the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the idols they worshipped, that they were there, manifest or just just an idol that represents them, that's worthy of worship. So again, it's a very deep concept. For most of us, we're not aware of their specific properties, but when a person realizes them, his iman increases. It's a very interesting matter. Again, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to be curious, when we know more about the angels, our curiosity is satisfied, our iman increases, and also it raises our awareness that they are with us. So the first thing, inshallah, I'll discuss is their physical properties, their attributes, and their abilities. So first thing, we know that angels are something different than mankind and then jinn. They have their own existence. They have their own world. We know that they are pure and noble, meaning that they are not, they don't sin. They don't cause any acts of disobedience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them in a way that they are fully obedient to him. And in the authentic hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, angels were created from light, and jinn were created from smokeless flame of fire, and Adam was created from which you have been told, which is clay or dirt or earth. So a person would say, what type of light, for example? Now, again, this is kind of the questions that first, there's no narration about it. All we know, they are created out of light, and we accept that. We don't try to, look for these kind of answers based on our observation or feelings or experiences. If it's set in the revelations, we accept it. So when it comes to their physical characteristics, we know that they do have wings, for example. The Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Fatir that there are some of them that have 2 wings, 3 wings, or even 4 wings. And Jibril alayhi salam, the Prophet alayhi salam, he saw him twice. The first time, He saw him after the revelation, when the revelation was delayed after the first few verses of Surah Iqra was revealed, Surah Al-Alaq was revealed. The Prophet was hoping to see him again. So one day, when he was walking in the desert, he saw him on his true form, and his true form was so big that it filled the entire horizon. Between the heaven and the earth, left and right, it filled it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't expect that, because the first time he saw him, Jibreel ﷺ took the shape of a man. So when he saw him, he got very scared. And that's why he ran home and, he grabbed his blanket and hid underneath it because he was that scared. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him Al-Muddathir. Al-Muddathir in Arabic means the person who grabs a blanket and hides underneath it. We also know that the second time that the Prophet ﷺ saw him, that was when he was in the seventh heaven, in the journey of Al-Isra and Al-Mi'raj, specifically the part of the Mi'raj where he ascended to the higher heavens. And he said that Jibreel ﷺ, he had 600 wings, and there were gemstones falling off of them. So again, the angels are a very beautiful creation. That's why sometimes people would say, oh, he looks like an angel or whatever, when he sees someone who is very gorgeous. And this is the general rule. We know, for example, that the angels that receive the soul of a disbeliever, they look very scary. The angels that the person sees in the grave, they look very scary. We know that the angels that are the keepers of hellfire, we know that there's 19 of them, like mentioned in Surah Al-Muddathir as well. We know that they look very scary. It's part of the punishment. But generally, angels are a very beautiful creation. We also know that, for example, the carriers of the throne, that they are huge beings. In Sunan Abi Dawud, the Prophet ﷺ said, I have been permitted to tell you one of Allah's angels. The one who bears the throne, the distance between his earlobe and his shoulder is a journey of 700 years. Now, if a person decides to calculate that distance and decide what's the average speed a person moves by, it's a huge distance. It's hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of kilometers. And that's only one angel that carries the throne. And we know that there's 8 angels carrying the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these great creations, without the revelations, we would have no way into understanding their nature, to learn who they are. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, just like we know that there is creational science, like looking at the sun, looking at the moon, these creations are huge. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the sun and the moon, and he made it in a way that a person, when he ponders upon this creation, he knows that it didn't just show up. And when a person tests his belief and acknowledges that Jibreel alayhi salam exists, the carriers of the throne exists, many of the other angels I'm going to mention, inshallah, exist, it strengthens his faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, we also know that they have many other attributes and abilities, and I'd rather not go through all of them. I'll just share a few, and at the very end, inshallah, I'll share some resources if a person wants to explore more about it. So, for example, we know that they don't eat, they don't drink, they don't marry or reproduce. And this is based on the verses that we know about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam when the guests came to him. They came to him and he cooked a sheep for them, but a sheep or a cow, Hijlin Hanith. Yeah, it was a cow. And they didn't eat this. The food was sitting just there. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them in a way that they don't need these resources, unlike us. We also know that they don't experience any tiredness or boredom. They obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perfectly. He created them that way, and they are able to always obey him and fulfill what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders them to. We know that they live in the heavens, but occasionally they do visit us. And for example, on the Laylatul Qadr, we also know that when it's the day of Jum'ah, that there's an angel standing on the door of the mosque and taking the name of the people that are attending. We know that when prayer is established, that they are also praying with us, and so on. but generally they live in the heavens. And we also believe that they die. كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه. So everything will cease to exist except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And among those that will cease to exist are the angels. For example, we know the story that after the first blow of the horn, a few beings will be left, including Jibril, Israfil, the angel of death. And all of them will die. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect them again. The last thing is that we also know that they take human forms. For example, Jibril alayhi salam, when he came to Maryam alayhi salam, he was in a human form. When the Prophet alayhi salam was sitting with his companions and Jibril alayhi salam came in, he looked like a Bedouin, and that was his human form as well. We know that some Sahaba saw that angel as well in human forms and so on. Again, there's plenty of ahadith on this. And inshallah, I'll share some of the resources if a person wants to look further into it. Now, an interesting misconception here, because we were discussing their attributes, is that sometimes people will, follow a thought and start believing in it. And this happened already a few times in the history of mankind. For example, the pagan Arabs, they said that angels are females and that they are the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, we don't know their gender. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell us. He didn't say that there is male and female. So we can't say that there is male, there is female, or that all of them are females. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَعَلُوا الْمَلَائِكَةَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ إِنَاثًا أَشَهِدُوا خَلْقَهُمْ سَتُكْتَبُ شَهَادَتُهُمْ وَيُسْأَلُونَ. So those people, they describe the angels who are the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be females. But did they even witness their creation? How did they come up with that thought? Their testimony will be recorded and they will be questioned. So even it's a severe thing. When a person claims something that's a matter of a ghaib and he starts promoting it, it's based on his whims, his desires, the whispers of the shaitan. But in matters of the unseen, it's not permissible for us to delve into these matters except with clear evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah. Another thing is their great number. So when we think of angels, we don't have an idea how many there are. But there is a hadith that gives us an idea. For example, one of them is that there is a place in the upper heaven called the Bayt al-Ma'mur, the house of Allah, al-Ma'mur, like they occupied. And the Prophet ﷺ, in the journey of al-Ma'raj, he went there and he saw that al-Bayt al-Ma'mur. So he asked Jibril alayhi salam, what is this? He told him, this is al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, and there's every day 70,000 angels, they perform Hajj, they perform prayers there. And they only visit it once. So every day, 70,000 unique angels visit that house and they never come back till the very end of this dunya. So imagine how many days passed since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created al-Bayt al-Ma'mur. Thousands. And all of these angels, they only visit that house once. Another hadith, and this is a very scary hadith, it tells us about the vast size of hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ said, hell will be brought on that day, like the day of resurrection. And 70,000, with 70,000 bridles. So someone is pulling those bridles. Now, 70,000 of them, on every bridle, there's 70,000 angels pulling them. So 70,000 times 70,000, that's 490 million. 490 million angels just pulling hellfire into the in the day of judgment. That's a huge number. We also know that every one of us, there's two angels writing their deeds. We know that they will be assigned to us on the day of judgment as well. We also know that we know that these angels, that there's two of them that's writing what we do. We know that there's a Qareen as well, but inshallah we'll get more into that. So another interesting thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us some of the names of those angels. Now I'll discuss them very briefly. The strongest and the most known of them is Jibril alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes refers to him as Ruh al-Amin, the soul. And this angel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him the one that sends the revelation to his prophets. So he's a messenger among the angels as well. There's a human messenger, which is the prophets we know, Adam, Musa, Isa alayhi salam. And there's also messengers from among the angels like Jibril alayhi salam. There's also Mikael. He's the one who's responsible for rain and vegetation. There's Israfil alayhi salam. He's the angel who will blow in the horn. And there will be two blows. One of them is the blow that will make everything die, except for a few. And another blow that will be that of Ba'ath, meaning that of resurrection. There's also an angel called Malik, and that's the keeper of hellfire. And he's mentioned in the Quran that on that, when the disbelievers enter hellfire, they will ask Malik to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the punishment less, wala'adu billah. And he will tell them it will not decrease and you will stay here forever, wala'adu billah. Another angel is called Ridwan, which is the keeper of paradise. There is Munkar and Nakir, the two angels that question the believer and the disbeliever in the grave. And there is Harut wa Marut, which their story is mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. Now, one term which some of you might be familiar with is Azrael. Now, Azrael, when you look in the authentic texts, you don't find any authentic narration attributed to the Sahaba, the Prophet, anyone. So the scholars agreed that this name, Azrael, is from the Israeliyat. It's from the stories of Bani Israel, whether it's from the Christians or the Jews, and it's not something that comes from the revelation. But we know that the angel of death is referred to in the Quran and in the Sunnah as Malik al-Maut, the angel of death. And that's the angel responsible for taking the souls of the people who die. Now, a misconception, someone would say, how is he able to, extract the souls of all of these people at once? Let's say, an explosion happened and 20 people died instantly. Well, I mean, we don't know how they are created from light. We don't know how they can move that fast. We don't know how they can have this massive size and not show up before us. So it's just part of it. It's part of that belief that we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us there's one angel responsible for taking the soul of all people. So be it. We accept that. We don't know how it works, but we believe in it because, again, it's coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created that angel, the one who gave him these capabilities. Now, that's the first part. The second part is, let's talk a little more about how they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So like I said, they're obedient. They have an instinct to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that's complete. If Allah commands them to do something, they do it without being tired, without being bored, without doing it, in a rushed manner. No, they always do it the best way possible. We also believe that they are legally accountable. Now, legally accountable means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ordered them to do something. We don't believe that they will get judged on the day of judgment and they may go to paradise or hellfire. No, these are just servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not subject to that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that they fear Allah and that they do what they obeyed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Nahl, يَخَافُونَ رَبَّهُم مِّن فَوْقِهِمْ وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. They fear their Lord above them and they do what they are commanded. So we believe that they're commanded to do things, and inshallah I'll share some of these stories, but they are not accountable the same way as humans and jinn are. Now, among their forms of worship is tasbih, saying Subhanallah wa bihamdih. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that when Allah made the choice for his angels and his servants to say a dhikr and to be like the standard when it comes to making dhikr and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he chose the words that the angels say, Subhanallah wa bihamdih. So it's a great dua. And we learn from the angels how they worship Allah because these are perfect servants. We don't say that, oh, they are much better than us. We shouldn't, look up to them. No, we look up to them just like we look up to people who are better than us, like how we look up to older people, like how we look up to the prophets and messengers, we also look up to angels. We know that they are in a state of perfect obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we hope to follow their footsteps. So among that types of worship is tasbih. Another one is standing in rows, and this shows us that it's part of Islam to be in a state of discipline, to be organized, to keep track of our time, of our behavior, of everything. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it among the qualities and the attributes of the servants of Allah. The Prophet he was narrated to say, when he came out to his companions, why do you not stand in rows as the angels do before their Lord? That's because they were not standing in proper rows during prayer. So they asked him, Ya Rasulullah, how do the angels stand in rows before their Rabb? And he said, they complete each row, beginning with the first and filling all the gaps. And this is the sunnah. When you go to the masjid and you pray behind the imam, the row starts right behind the imam. And then people start filling right and left. If there is a gap at the right, at the left between the people, like if there's gap left and right, we can't start another row. No, the person has to fill the first row first. If there's gap between the people, they need to get closer to each other, shoulder to shoulder, feet touching, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us the angels are doing, and we want to be in that state of perfect, organized worship. Another form of worship they do is Hajj, like I mentioned, that there's Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, and there's 70,000 angels that go to that house. And this is the equivalent of Al-Hajj in this dunya. So for mankind, we make Hajj by going to Al-Kaaba. For the angels, they have that equivalent in the seventh heaven, which is called Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur. Now, an interesting misconception here is that the term of fallen angel. Now, as Muslims, we believe that all of these angels, they are pure and they are in a perfect state of obedience. But sometimes a person would think that, for example, the shaitan, Iblis, was, for example, an angel, but not a jinn. But this is not true. If you were to read the Quran, yes, some verses will make you think that he's among the angels. But being among the angels doesn't mean he's one of them. What it means is that, so if you look at the tafsir, it tells you that before the creation of Adam alayhi salam, the shaitan was very obedient. He was among the best, of the creation from among the jinn that was worshipping Allah. So his rank elevated, and he was sitting with the angels who were the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, the shaitan got very jealous for him. Like, he's made out of fire. This creation is made out of dust. How can he be better than me? So when Allah commanded the angels, including Satan, who is made from fire, to prostrate to Adam as a sign of respect, he refused. He refused, and he said that Allah made the wrong decision, that he is better than him. When he did that, he became a disbeliever, and he became no longer part of that group. Now, in Christian theology, in other religions, they say, no, Satan was an angel, but he disobeyed Allah. And we don't believe in that. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ, and they do as they are commanded. Now, the next chapter, inshallah, is let's think a little more about their involvement with mankind. So their involvement started very early with the creation of Adam alayhi salam. Before his creation, they were even curious. They asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why did you create him? They didn't ask it out of arrogance or out of dislike. No, they asked it because they were curious about the wisdom. And this is very important. When a person has trouble understanding the wisdom of a teaching, that's fine for him to ask in a respectful manner. But for example, if a person, let's say one of those touchy topics, let's say someone asks, why does Allah allow a man to marry 4 women? Now, the way it's asked is already an important part of answering that question. If a person asks it out of unhappiness, they think it's unfair, they think it's something that they don't deserve, that's a problem. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who creates, He's the one who commands, and it's not up to me to ask in a way that is rejecting or being unhappy about that teaching, you're welcome to try to understand the wisdom. And this is among the fiqh that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to understand that part. We want to understand the wisdom in what happens. But when you ask it in a way that you're unhappy with the teaching, that's a problematic. So again, when they asked that question, they were curious. Why are you creating mankind? And he told them, you don't know what I know. He created us for a reason. And that reason is to be in this earth and to take and to utilize the material, utilize all the things that are around us, and to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way he deserves. So even if there's many, disbelievers, lots of evil happening, the people who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Muslims, that's the reason that Allah created us, to be Muslims, to submit to him. Another thing that the angels did is that they prostrated to Adam, like I mentioned. They also taught Adam alayhi salam how to give salam. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him, he told him, go to this group of angels and hear how they greet you. Out of that, this is how we greet each other. And they said, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. That's among the things that the angels taught Adam alayhi salam. They also taught us how to do ghusl. So when Adam alayhi salam passed away, his sons, they didn't know how to do ghusl. They didn't know how it worked when someone dies. So the angels taught them how to do ghusl to Adam alayhi salam. Now, angels are also very involved in our everyday life. It starts with even before that person exists and exits the womb of the mother. For example, we know that on the 42nd night, the soul is blown into the fetus. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends an angel and he makes him write many things and do many things on his behalf, including creating the sense of hearing, the sense of sight, the skin, the flesh, the bones. And this is part of a longer hadith, and I advise you to check it out, inshallah. Of course, when I say that he creates the sense of hearing, the angel creates it on the behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like Isa alayhi salam, he was able to raise the dead. He only raised it because Allah gave him the capability to do that. It's not because he can, it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed him to do that. Another thing that is very important for the believer to realize is that just like we have a qareen, we have a companion of the jinn that's always whispering to us bad thoughts and trying to get us into sins and disobedience and disbelief, we also know that there is a companion angel. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is none amongst you with whom is not a companion from amongst the angels and another companion from amongst the jinn that is assigned to you. This is different than the two angels that are writing what we do. So there's two angels with us writing the records, and there's another angel that's telling us to do good, and there's a jinn, an evil jinn, a shaitan, that is telling us to do bad. The final thing, again, there's plenty more other things they do, but it's going to be too long to go through all of them. But we know that they record our good deeds and our bad deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِنَّ عَلَيْكُمْ لَحَافِظِينَ كِرَامًا كَاتِبِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. So there's two appointed angels that's mentioned explicitly in other texts that there's two, and that they're writing down your deeds and they know what you do. And there's also an evidence that they know our intention. There's a hadith that I didn't mention here. They would go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tell him that your servant is about to do something bad. So about to do something bad means that he didn't do it yet, so it's an intention. What should we do? And he would tell them that don't write it until that person does the bad deed. If he doesn't do it, don't even record it. And of course, we know that when someone does a bad deed, it's recorded as one bad deed. If a person does something good, it's 10 times. So it's recorded as 10 good deeds. And this is from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like it's from the mercy of Allah to tell us that they exist and that they're with us. Because part of believing in them is when you are about to do something, for example, bad. Of course, you don't do it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you and he sees you. But also remembering that there is an angel literally witnessing you disobeying Allah, it makes it much harder. makes you you feel shy to do that in front of someone, let alone an angel who's pure and obedient and is there to help us and guide us. So these things are general. They apply to a believer and a disbeliever. But there are things that are also specific to the believers. For example, we know that they love the believers. In the Sahihain in Bukhari or Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ told us that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a person, he calls Jibril alayhi salam and he tells him, Allah loves so and so, so love him. So Jibril alayhi salam, he loves that person and he calls out the inhabitants of the heavens. So he calls the other angels and tell them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves so and so, so love him. So that love, it descends to the inhabitants of the earth. So Allah loves that person, Jibril alayhi salam loves that person, the other angels love that person, and then the inhabitants of, and then he will find acceptance on earth. So what does that mean? I do something good, and I do it for the sake of Allah. I do it with sincerity. I'm following the Sunnah, and I see people, for example, telling me, "Oh, this is a very good deed to do." This is like an accelerated ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to know that what you're doing is good. We don't say, "Oh, this is riya," or "No, I shouldn't think about it." No, alhamdulillah, it's good. When you do good and a person acknowledges it, you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is coming from Allah. This is something good. And this is a blessing, that when you do something good and people tell you it's good, it's something that encourages you to do more. Of course, without corrupting your intention. It's still purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the people who he loves, and Jibril alayhi salam loves, and the angels love, and to find acceptance on this earth. Because when a person gets encouraged to do these things and he knows it's connected all the way to Jibril alayhi salam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it encourages you to continue doing good. Another thing is that we know that they send blessings on the believers. So when the term yusalli, like sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we don't mean worship. We don't mean like praying to the Prophet alayhi wasallam, for example. No, it means something different. So the word salah, originally before Islam, it meant dua. When Islam came, the word salah, it still has its linguistic meaning in Islam, in Arabic, but it also has a specific meaning when it comes to Islam, and it means praying, which is this, the act of worship that starts with takbir, finishes with salam. You need to be in a state of worship. That's salah. But when you say sallallahu alayhi wasallam, it means you're sending blessings to the Prophet alayhi wasallam. You want his name to be elevated and mentioned and honored in the upper levels of heaven among the angels with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, هو الذي يصلي عليكم وملائكته ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور وكان بالمؤمنين رحيما. So it is he who confers blessing upon you, who sends blessing upon you, and his angels as well. And these blessings, like any blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has an actual materialistic effect. And this is by bringing us out of darkness into light. For example, a person who is very rich. Now, having wealth in itself is a blessing, but being able to benefit from it is something very different. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is blessing that person with the wealth, he's able to spend it in a way that pleases Allah. He gains it in a way that pleases Allah. He spends it without spending too much on things that don't deserve. He spends money on sadaqah, he pays his zakah, he gives money to the poor, he spends it in a wise way. All of these things is a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives barakah to a person. Just having money, for example, and you're unable to do anything with it, or or you lose it suddenly, all of these things mean that the money does not have barakah in it. Of course, it can be an ibtila, but when there's no barakah in it, because you made it from haram sources or whatever, it's hard for a person to enjoy that blessing. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, make all of these blessings, make us experience these blessings. Again, they have many other involvements. Like in the book I'm going to mention at the very end, there's like over 20 things that they're involved and interact with the believers in. But a few other things, we know that they make istighfar. So when a person, for example, goes to pray, when he waits for prayer, all of these things are among the reasons that angels make istighfar for us. When we make a dua, at the end we say Ameen. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, accept our prayers and to fulfill them. So angels also do that. When they hear that, they want them to be fulfilled for us as well. We know that they attend prayers. And when there is classes of dhikr and studying knowledge, when the people are surrounded, ask anyone who attends halaqah at a masjid and such, they always feel a sense of calmness. It always feels very good. And I believe most of us experienced that when the masajid were closed before COVID and then the masajid opened up again. When you start going to this halaqat, you will experience a very good feeling of tranquility. And that's because the angels are surrounding us. They sit with us. The existence, their presence next to us makes us calmer. We also know that on the day of Jum'ah, there's an angel standing on the door of the masjid. And he keeps writing the names of the people, the first one, second one, third one, and so on. Now that record is open till the moment the imam is on the minbar. That's why it's very highly recommended that a person comes before Jum'ah, sits, waits for the imam. This is a great time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts dua more during that time. We know that the first person who goes has a specific reward, second has a specific reward, and so on. All of these are blessings that a person does not want to miss on. Now, what is our duty towards the angels? First thing, knowing who they are, accepting their relations as it is, all of these things is a very basic duty towards believing in them. We don't want to perform harmful actions towards them. And this is interesting. In the authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we know that the angels are harmed by the same things that harm mankind. For example, the smell of onions and garlic, it's harmful to them. We know that if a house has idols or dogs or such, the angels don't enter. It even happened that the Prophet ﷺ was waiting for Jibril and he didn't enter his home. So then he realized that there was a small dog underneath the bed. And when he removed it out, Jibril ﷺ entered. And he asked him, and he told him that the Malak does not enter a house that has a photo or an idol or a dog in it. Another thing is to ponder upon the situations and circumstances when they are present. It makes you reach a higher level of khushu'. Just like with a person, when he's in a good company, he's able to do good. The best company is that company of angels. Another thing is to be shy of their presence. So a person may be about to commit a sin, and he remembers, oh, there's two angels literally writing down what I'm about to do. There's another angel that wants me to do good. So when the person realizes that, he feels shy to do a sin. And inshallah, when he remembers that, he won't do it. Now, this topic has many, many details on it, and I avoided going into many details. Sometimes it's a little too much, but there's two books I'd recommend. One of them is called The World of the Noble Angels, the same title as this presentation. And pretty much all the information I got is from this book. It's by a scholar called Umar al-Ashqar. He wrote a series on the Islamic greatest 7 books. It's on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, angels, jinn, the smaller Qiyamah, the Day of Judgment, many other things. It's a very good series. The book is not that big. It's like 120 pages. There's another book, but this is in Arabic. I don't believe it was translated. It's called Al-Haba'ik fi Akhbar al-Mala'ik by a famous scholar called Suyuti. And again, it's like the main reference that the first book is based on. So I advise you, if you want to learn more about their existence, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them for a reason, how they are involved in our lives. These two books are very, very interesting to read. This is it, inshallah. I'll stop the recording, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.